So one of the best things about a game getting delayed, especially a game like Starfield, is that you can expect the game to come out with less bugs than if it was to release on the original release date. And with Starfield, that is something I think a lot of people are hoping for. As we know, with Starfield, it's a Bethesda game. Bugthesda is what everybody likes to call them. And people are expecting this game to be released and have bugs in it. But if we take a look at what they did show off at the Starfield Direct, the game looks extremely polished. I mean, it graphically looks very good. It was running smoothly, whatever frame rate they were running it at during the showcase, and it just looks like it is a ton of fun with an insane amount of stuff to do. And we now have confirmation that it looks like Starfield is going to be running with a lot less bugs when it does release on September 6th. So Matt Booty was on the Giant Bomb at Night podcast, and he had this to say when it comes to Starfield. Well, specifically, he says Starfield has the fewest bugs of any Bethesda game. This is being claimed by Xbox. He says, we have an awful lot of people internally playing Starfield, working with Todd and the team. I see bug counts, and just by the numbers, if it shipped today, Starfield would have the fewest bugs of any Bethesda game ever shipped. Now, Phil Spencer also talked about Starfield and just kind of what is going on here with the delay and why they decided to delay and where Todd Howard and the Bethesda team was on the actual release date from Starfield. We remember that first trailer that they did show off with gameplay. And I mean, the game to me still looked very good, but there was definitely issues there in terms of like the combat and the reaction of the enemies and just the overall smoothness of the game. I feel like if they would have released it when they wanted to release it in November of 2022, it would have been the prototypical crazy amount of bugs in the release of a Bethesda game, but it still would have been fun to play. People still would have had a lot of fun. And by this point right now, it probably would have been updated multiple times. That would be in a much better state. But Phil Spencer also talked about this. And he talked about Xbox and the role in Starfield and everything with the release date. And he says here, the team has definitely matured. They've got Fallouts and Skyrims and Elder Scrolls under their belt. When the acquisition closed, this game had a significantly earlier ship date, earlier than the date we had first set for Starfield. We sat down with Todd and the team and explained we wanted to give them time. I think Matt said we have every QA person in our entire company playing Starfield right now, looking at bug counts, looking at the quality of where we are. The nice thing about what we have showed today from the perspective is that this was the game. We've been playing the game for quite a while, and that's the game, which I think is a very good sign because what we did see was phenomenal. I mean, the game looked very good. 30 FPS, 60 FPS, all of that type of stuff. Combat looked like it was just vastly more polished than the first time they did show off the game, especially with the reactions of the enemies to the gunplay. And then the way that some of the enemies were exploding and being shot through the air, the way that you could do all of the different styles of play, like just with melee and the guy running around there and punching everybody. And then there was stealth, and there's just so many vastly different things that you could do within Starfield in terms of the combat. It's one of the things that has me the most excited. So I think it's a good decision here that Xbox went to Todd Howard, said you have more time. And it really brings you back to the entire thing that happened with Redfall, because this is a completely different story, it seems like. With Redfall, you had Phil Spencer coming out during the Kind of Funny interview and saying that we should have been more hands-on with that studio, with Arcane, and with the game way before this game came out so that they could get that 60 FPS within the game. And it seems like this is the exact opposite situation where Xbox has been extremely hands-on, having all their QA testers and even going up to Todd and the team and saying that you guys can release this at a later date. We want to give you more time. So it's a completely different scenario. I feel like from the Xbox side of things, in their mind, they know that Starfield is a significantly bigger game. It is a much more popular studio in terms of Bethesda and a much more important game for a release when it comes to Xbox and first party. As like I've said multiple times, I think Starfield is going to be a generational game, and they really can't miss on this release. They have such a huge opportunity here. I think Phil, Matt Booty, Xbox, all those guys there probably realize this thing when they're looking at Starfield versus Redfall. But again, they obviously should have been more involved with Redfall from an earlier standpoint. Now, when it comes to 30 FPS versus 60 FPS, I mean, this debate is going to continue to rage on until this game is released, until people have it in their hands and they see how it feels in 30 FPS. From what we understand from Todd Howard is that it was absolutely a creative design decision. They wanted to have that high fidelity, and there's actually headroom with the frames per second on the consoles right now. And I do believe him. There is that meme, the Todd Howard Lies law and stuff, and it's just kind of a funny thing that happens, but I do believe him about the headroom, because if you look at the Series S, if it is actually running at 1440p, pretty surprised that it's hitting that 1440p with just how big and how vast that game is on a $299 console. Pretty impressive. 30 FPS, of course, and then on the Series X, 4K 30 FPS. But what Todd Howard was saying, there's headroom, but they wanted to make sure that the frame rate is steady rather than it jumping up and down depending on what is going on with the game, because there is so much happening within this game and it's random. Like, things are just going to happen. Lots of random encounters, combat, all that type of stuff. They wanted to lock in on a steady frame rate. And we will see when the game does release if it is a steady 30 FPS at the very least. I feel like it will be, but we'll see. And I mean, we're going to see the analysis from like Digital Foundry and all the other channels out there that will do a deep dive into the game. But this brings up the question of, is it time already for a new console for Xbox? And we know that there are those rumors of the PlayStation 5 Pro as well as the slim PlayStation 5. But there's not been any rumors about a new upgraded Xbox Series X specifically. And they also just announced the black Xbox Series S with that 1 terabyte drive. I don't think we'll be seeing an Xbox Series X Pro anytime soon. And we kind of have confirmation about this from Phil Spencer himself. Now, this was with an interview with Bloomberg, and he was being asked about, is it time for a hardware upgrade and all that type of stuff. And here is what Phil Spencer has to say on this. He says, right now, we're pretty set on the hardware we have. I don't feel an imperative to make a new console. That's not the feedback we're getting right now. And then they've also talked about ramping up the production of the Xbox Series X and S to get it to more people worldwide. Obviously, with Starfield coming out, that's going to really push more consoles and people are going to be going out and buying that. Even the Xbox Series S, people will be going out and buying that. So from the mouth of Phil Spencer, don't be expecting a pro version of the Xbox Series X anytime soon. But this begs the question that, is there at any point in the future, are we going to see it at a pro Xbox Series X, especially if the PlayStation 5 does release their pro console? I think the question is becoming more and more relevant now as we are seeing more 30 FPS games come out. I mean, Starfield is massive in scope. It's just a game that I don't think anyone has really seen in a very, very long time, or ever really. I think it is going to be a generational game, and I think 30 FPS is actually fine for the actual size and scope of that game. But if we're starting to get more stuff like this, are these consoles going to be able to keep up from a first-party perspective and from a third-party perspective? Of course, the marketing when these things came out was 60 FPS. That was going to be the baseline. And that is just, it hasn't been the case right now. There have been multiple games that have come out that were at 30 FPS. And it's not just Xbox games. You got to think about games like Gotham Knights, that the whole debacle around that. Will we see more of that going forward? And will that prompt Xbox and PlayStation to push out the pro versions of the consoles? And how much will those cost? Because we have to keep in mind, the reality of the situation is we are 3 years, or going on 3 years, since the release of the PS5 and the Series X. When they did release, they were powerful in comparison to the highest end PC. Like, they weren't at the highest end, but they were at a much better spot if we're looking at previous generations like the PS4 and the Xbox One. But as the years have went on, higher end GPUs, just much better technology and stuff has been coming out, and the consoles are falling behind every single day in terms of a performance perspective compared to the higher end PCs out there. So will they need to release that pro console to keep up better than what we currently have here on the market? And how much will that cost? Because $500 right now, still for the performance that we are getting out of these consoles, and that we potentially can get out of these consoles. I mean, there's still many 60 FPS great looking games out there. I still think is a pretty good deal. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
We'll be right back.